what's going on? It's Preacher! Sorry it's been a bit quiet lately, but good God, the laborious task of preparing for all the guides, for all the classes for 725 is underway, and my God, did we time it right. But it has involved the collection of every artifact weapon in the game. On the way to capping most of them now, we're getting there slowly but surely, getting them all to level 35 traits, getting them all through a raid, and we're all doing Nighthold on them all. Oh, whew. As you can imagine, it's many, many hours of effort. Not that exciting to see, so yeah, while some stream time is dedicated to it, not all of it by any means, and we're getting there though. And that's the good news. And again, we did time this pretty damn well as the 725 PTR is underway, and we will be checking that out and taking a look and bringing you some footage of all those things. Now, you've probably noticed, or you've heard rumblings, or maybe you've heard even rage threads, or been pointed to anger threads, etc., of the changes that are coming. Blizzard decided not to do a lot of class changes with 7.2, the most recent patch, because of course we were getting all our new artifact stuff, which means balance is going to get a little wonky as people get gradually more powerful over the course of this patch cycle. So 725 is when they're going to try and bring everything into line, no doubt in preparation for the tomb. So it's looking good. Now, some classes are getting far more attention than others, and not surprisingly. So Destruction Warlocks, we're going to talk about these a little bit more detail shortly, but the ones that are getting the big attention are the Destruction Warlocks, the Outlaw and Sub-Rogues, the Brewmaster and Mistweaver Monks, the Havoc Demon Hunters, and the Guardian Druids. Now, when I say they're getting the most attention, that certainly does not mean other classes aren't getting attention. Expect class changes for pretty much every single spec in the game in some way, be it slight nerfs, slight buffs. But that is the important thing here. Just because I read off those classes getting major class changes, that does not mean they're getting buffed. It's going to be all kinds of balancing aside. So we can probably say with the Havoc Demon Hunter that they're looking to take a lot of the sting out of that initial launch. We've seen Demon Hunters pushing like 3.4 million over a longer period than you would expect for a pull, and then kind of relying on that pull damage to maintain them throughout the course of a fight as they gradually reduce down back into line with everyone else. So what they will probably want to do is something like they did with the Fire Mage over the early course of the expansion, which is take a lot of sting out of that initial pull and give you increased damage over the course of a fight to try and smooth out the balance there. Because of course, if you have a class that does outrageous damage on demand, like the Demon Hunters are capable of, that kind of throws balance issues all over the place, like when things are spawning. So if you look at things like Star Augur Astraeus, when you have the things that should not be spawning in the end, what you generally want to have is a Demon Hunter ready and raring to go when one of those ads spawns, and then the next one spawns and you want another Demon Hunter ready and raring to go in order to unleash this insane DPS. And if you don't have that, you can be at a disadvantage. So that's something they'll be wanting to address there. As I said, the other classes are all going to get some changes. Now, the initial thing is, and Blizzard's already fighting fires, and we do tend to say this every time the new PTR cycle comes out, is what we'll have is a series of data miners who will go in and try and rip spell IDs and tooltips out of the game before Blizzard's made any major announcements, and a lot of that is generally out of context, and it's certainly not complete, which is the important thing. You might get one half of the story where the other half brings everything back into line. That tends to drive the average player crazy. Absolute rage monsters can come from that, or, you know, the sky is falling. Already I'm seeing with the recent Frost announcements, a lot of people who follow me are now playing Frost Mages after watching me play it on stream, is that Thermal Void has been nerfed. Not unsurprisingly from anybody playing at a very high level is, yeah, it gets a little crazy. It's a 3-minute cooldown that you can actually keep running way past 3 minutes should you have some good RNG. That is absolutely not how that spell is supposed to work in any way, shape, or form. But now, of course, the response to that is, well, this spec is dead. It's dead. It might end up being so. It could be the case. It might end up being so. But I'll talk a little bit more about the major changes there. So they're bringing Unholy DKs, trying to bring them back into line by making their resources not so absurd, by buffing Death Coil damage and increasing its cost. Simple things like that. The Demon Hunters that we mentioned earlier are getting big attention. They're looking to try and make Demon Blades a little bit smoother by increasing it procs chance to 100%. So it's guaranteed to happen, but it's going to give you less. So it'd be a much smoother generation rather than having some uptime, downtime, and trying to smooth out that burst again that we were talking about earlier. We know with the Guardian Druids, they're actually getting nerfed and brought back into line. Extremely powerful tank. as I'm no doubt if you're in the raiding community, you will probably be well aware of how powerful the Guardian Druids are right now, by like flat out removing Mark of Ursul and saying you don't need that, which I think is absolutely fair, honestly. Not a lot of the top-end Guardian Druids are complaining about that at all. They're like, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. As long as we don't go too overboard, we get it. We can count, you know, when you've got a tank class that can counter everything and stack all those things together to counter absolutely things that should colossally crush a tank into the ground, then that's a problem. Especially if the other tanks don't have a hope in hell of doing something similar. So Guardian Druids have been a bit of a problem, haven't they, over the course of the entire expansion. We saw solo tanking Guam Mythic before they had to change the whole boss because of Guardian Druids, and now it looks like they're just making some significant changes by trying to bring those back into line. Now, I will post some visuals in the back of the changes that have been announced so far. What I always want to reiterate here is, if you have the time, which is difficult in Legion, this is the most difficult expansion ever to have some free time to go and play around with a character that you're not actively progressing because it's on the PTR, and of course it will be erased at some point. Don't worry, I'll be on there doing it for you if you can't. But if you are interested in trying to give good feedback and trying to assess changes and trying to in some way defend a spec that you particularly enjoy or reinvigorate a spec that is potentially dead, we can again use the mage example. So we've seen recently the Fire Mage becoming very, very outclassed, and all of us switching over to Frost. And now Frost getting nerfed, and it's like, do we really want to face, given the situation with artifact power and gearing and legendaries, the potential of switching specs yet again to Arcane, cycling through all 3 of the specs over the course of expansion? In Legion, absolutely not the most promising thing. But the point here is not to try and say, I want this to be the most powerful, blah, blah, blah. What you want is to have the choice. And Blizzard's done extremely well. We have to give them credit for that over the course of Legion, for making nearly every spec pretty bang on close. What we've seen since 7.2 is that balance, which was almost perfectly in a straight line pre 7.2, and it absolutely was. It was almost a perfect straight line in terms of overall performance of every single spec in the game. A couple of outliers for sure, but with 7.2 we've seen that skew massively. Balance has been thrown way out. This is why 7.25 is looking to fix all that and bring it back into line. So hopefully they'll nail it down and get it right. But we need to be a part of that. You absolutely need to be a part of that. Don't go in pessimistic, and certainly don't just turn everything into, this is shit, change it. You have to give some feedback. Why is it crap? Yeah? Why is it crap? Why is this not working? Why is this over the top? Can we get something here? We think this might be better. Blizzard always pays attention to that. They might not do what you want, which often gets mistaken as just pure ignorance. And I say always, sometimes they have flat out ignored obvious feedback, even from myself, where I was like, this is an obvious problem, you should fix this, and they don't. But that's their choice to do that, but we should always try. It's always worth trying to give that feedback rationally, but always give a reason why you're giving certain feedback and check it in. There are far too many class changes already announced, and they are probably all going to change over the course of the next month or so. They're probably all going to change. And when that happens, that's when we'll start looking more in depth. I'll be playing around it and bring you some footage and some ideas of what's going on there. All right, guys. So that's what we're doing in the background here, is preparing for the 7.25 guide. So I'd just say bear with us, and we'll definitely have some more WoW content coming to YouTube shortly. Don't worry about that. All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.